Hello friends, Patrick here. Welcome to the fourth module in our 5720 class, and thanks for hanging in with me through these first three overview modules. I know that everyone's anxious to really dive into the practical instructional issues around some of these big areas: reading fluency, word recognition, comprehension, and that is what we begin today. This is the module that focuses specifically on beginning reading, struggles with beginning reading, intervention instruction for beginning reading, and so forth. Now, because we do have so many secondary folks with us, and because it's of course quite crucial in upper elementary as well, we also are sort of adding on some information about advanced word recognition, multisyllabic decoding, and so forth. All right, there's a lot that I want to show you basically. So this video is probably going to be broken up into small sort of focused sections. Today, right now, this first section, there is some things I want to tell you, some background or underlying knowledge about decoding and word recognition, and I think it's really critical to know. And then we're going to look in this section of the video at just what makes really good phonemic awareness and what I call phonemes in use, or alphabetic principle instruction. Okay, so here we go. First, again, the things that I want to tell you about word recognition and why it's so critical. Connie Jewell has been one of our epic scholars of beginning reading, since way back in the 1980s when she was conducting research. She did a long-term study following kids carefully from first grade through fourth grade down in Texas. And one of the first truly longitudinal studies of reading development that we have. One of the studies that really informed us how critical things like phonemic awareness are to beginning reading. What came out of that study in terms of the longitudinal perspective of reading development is that poor decoding at the end of first grade produced something like a 0.94 chance that a child would be a poor reader at the end of fourth grade. Basically, that's as close to 100%, one-to-one correspondence as you get in statistics. The bottom line is, when we're talking about struggling readers, if you're not a competent, proficient decoder at the end of first grade, it is very, very difficult going forward. Okay, so of course, that's why we're going to give this really careful focus and emphasis. Why is this the case? Why is it so critical? I want to underscore a couple of points from the research and from the psychology of reading. First, we know that effective decoding basically creates automatic word recognition. It is not so much the effective decoding, but the full phoneme grapheme map that decoding leads to, that really bonds words and pronunciation in our long-term memory and allows for that sort of instantaneous retrieval. So I use this term a lot in my courses on campus, the idea of a full phoneme grapheme map. In other words, we in our minds are able to map the sounds that make up a word. I've got the word they here, of course. A. We are able to map those to the letters that are representing or making those sounds, as we say to kids. So in this case, two sounds that are made by four letters, or two digraphs, two letter combos that make one sound. These maps could take a lot of other fashion in terms of very regular words, consonant, vowel, consonant words, where we'd see an arrow, one sound to one letter. The bottom line, though, is that decoding, use of phonics instruction to read words, is the best way to create that full grapheme phoneme map that really does bond a word in long-term memory. Once we've established that, and so here's my second little diagram here, and I'm sorry if these are kind of small, but what we're looking for is this strong connection between this spelling, this orthographic representation, cat, the pronunciation of cat, so I've represented it with sounds, cat, and of course, ideally we have a little meaning vertex in this triangle, so here's our little cat. Now, what happens is that, effective decoding begins to establish, at least this part of the connection. As we continue to have successful decoding attempts of this word, these links become stronger. They become thicker. And even, of course, the meaning links between in all directions until such that, boom, now these links are so strong that when we see this spelling, this orthographic representation, we immediately hear the pronunciation in our head automatically, and we call up that fuzzy little guy that is our cat. Okay? This is basically how we develop automatic word recognition. The stronger these bonds, the more successful decoding attempts, the more automatic that word is in terms of our retrieval from long-term memory. We are basically, the task of beginning reading and through the early years, one just huge critical element is this building of these connections for as many words as possible. In other words, developing students' sight word lexicons. That basic sort of lexicon or dictionary, if you will, that they carry around in their head of words where these solid connections are created between the spelling, the pronunciation, and the meaning. The larger that lexicon, the more fluent a child will be in terms of text reading, because the more words in a text that they will recognize automatically by sight, not have to work at doing, and thus be able to sort of direct their attention towards what that text means. All right, so effective decoding not only builds this process, but it allows for what we call self-teaching. And this is very common sensual, but a student who is a strong decoder, every time they sit down at a book and are successfully decoding words, they are serving as their own teacher, independently building their sight word lexicon. Student who's a mediocre or even a poor decoder, well, they are doing much less sort of adding of sight words to their lexicon. So, self-teaching both establishes words in long-term memory, an automatic retrieval of them, and it allows for a student to sort of increase that sight word lexicon independently each and every time they pick up a text. So obviously, if you can't do this, you're not establishing words automatically by sight, and you're not building that larger, ever-increasing sight word lexicon that leads to fluent text reading. All right, so what makes this difficult, since this is the sort of literacy difficulties class, what does make this difficult for kids who struggle? Well, here's a few issues that have been either clearly demonstrated by research or things that I've observed, in very practical settings over the years. First, limited phonemic awareness. We just spelled out on the previous sort of chart page that it is that building of a full phoneme grapheme map, matching sounds to letters, that cements a word in our long-term memory. Well, to do that, of course, you have to be able to segment out those. Let's stop, honey.